Washington, D.C., May 2015. 46-year-old Savas Savopoulos' day had started much the same as ever, with work. He was a very successful CEO of a huge construction company, American Ironworks, Inc. They were a leading manufacturer of custom-made building products and installation services in the Washington, D.C. region. An old friend said Savas was larger than life. He taught us to have a good time but to do things right. He was a solid guy with a deep belly laugh. He was married to his high school sweetheart Amy Martin, and one friend said they were as good a match as peanut butter and jelly. Savas had always had a thing for her and told people all she needed to do was say yes. That was the woman he was going to marry. The pair then both went to the same university, and this was where they really hit it off and started dating. He and Amy would soon marry in a Greek wedding, and over the next few years they had 3 children together. 2 daughters, Katerina and Abigail, and a son, Philip. After Savas got his law degree, he joined his family's ironworks business, working closely with his dad, also called Philip, to expand things. The Savopoulos family soon became well known and loved in their community, and their hard work over the years had afforded them a very lovely life. The family lived in a beautiful multi-million-dollar mansion on Woodland Drive, one of the most affluent areas, and home to some famous names over the years, including vice presidents and ambassadors. Savas was described as a brilliant man of impeccable character, and he and Amy were generous with both their time and money. Savas helped fund the National Child Research Center, as well as serving on its board, and coached his kids' sports teams. Amy was a regular face at their children's schools too, often baking and decorating gingerbread houses for the whole class and volunteering where she could. Their 2 daughters, 19-year-old Abigail and 16-year-old Katerina, were now out of town at boarding school, so things around the house had definitely been a little quieter than normal, but everyone was keeping busy. Amy had been catching up with friends and hosting get-togethers and parties, Savas was working on a new business venture, and Philip had been racing around the go-kart tracks with his coach Jay. Nothing made the 10-year-old happier. His family followed him all over for his races, and he was showing real promise for being a serious competitor in a few years' time. Jay described him as 10 years old going on 35. He was just that mature, definitely taking after his dad. But Philip's latest race on May 3rd, however, did not go smoothly, and he ended up getting a concussion. He was sent home to rest, but the doctor was confident it was nothing to worry about. Wednesday, May 13th. With Philip still home from school and taking it easy, Amy was also home looking after him. The pair made a quick trip to the doctors to check on his concussion, before heading back to the house. Savas was also out and about and went to check on his latest project, a martial arts studio he was building in Virginia, which was just days away from opening. He took their housekeeper Nalitza, who went by Nellie, with him to look over things and do some cleaning, getting everything ready for the grand opening. At 4:25, a dog-sitting company called Amy to confirm an upcoming appointment. The employee spoke to Amy a lot, and she said she sounded sleepy and under the weather, not her usual chatty self at all. Close to 5 p.m, Savas got a call from Amy himself. The full conversation is not quite known, but Savas hung up and told Nellie he was going back home to look after Philip, because Amy had apparently made plans to go out. At the time, Amy was at home with their second housekeeper, Vera, but she was now overdue to clock off. Savas drove back and Nellie went home too, ready to start work again the next day. Nellie had been with the family for 20 years and had introduced Vera to them about 5 years ago. Nellie and Vera were well and truly part of the family. Vera had been sending all her savings back home to her children who were still living in El Salvador and going to college there. She was excited for a break soon, and she had planned on going back there with her husband Bernardo and retiring the following year. It was getting later and Vera's husband Bernardo was sat at home, wondering where on earth she was. Vera was supposed to have finished at 3 p.m, and his wife being late back without contacting him just never happened. He rang and rang her, but soon the ringing stopped, and it seemed as though the battery had either died or the phone had been turned off. Bernardo now had a shift himself and would be working through the night, so he tried his best to put his concern aside, rationalising his wife's lack of contact as best he could. Although Bernardo was having no luck getting through to the Savopoulos house, other people seemingly were. A string of odd calls and texts would follow. Just before 6 p.m, the security company that monitored the Savopoulos house received an alert about broken glass on the outside of the house. But it seemed as though nothing was wrong, and Savas even spoke to them himself and asked how he could access the footage for himself and where it was stored. Savas then called his assistant and personal driver of a couple of months, Jordan Wallace, but couldn't get through. He left him a voicemail asking him to go to American Ironworks and pick up a package. Savas said he needed it delivering the next morning. At 9 p.m, Amy called a local Domino's Pizza. She had placed an order for 2 pepperoni pizzas and paid over the phone with her credit card. Before the employee hung up, Amy said, "Ring the doorbell. I'm caring for a sick child. Just leave it by the front door." At 9:35 p.m, Savas left a voicemail for Nellie. Unusually, he told her not to come to work the next day. He said Vera was going to stay the night because Amy was ill. He told Nellie that Vera's phone was dead and they didn't have a charger, so he was just passing on the message.
Hey Nellie, it's Sava. I hope you get this message. Amy is in bed sick tonight, and she was sick this afternoon, and Vera offered to stay and help her out because, we're going through some stuff with Philip. So she's going to stay the night here, okay? Thank you. Oh, and would you send me a text when you get the message just so I can make sure? Thanks, Nellie. Good night.
Nellie would not get the message until the next morning. When the Domino's delivery driver got to the house, he followed Amy's instructions and put the pizzas on the ground outside. Just by the doormat was an envelope with a tip in it. As he picked it up, he noted that the porch light was on, but inside, the house was totally dark and eerily quiet. He got back into his car and carried on with his deliveries. Little could he or anyone else have known, inside that house, a frightening ordeal was taking place. An absolute nightmare that would continue long into the night and the following morning. Savas's assistant Jordan then got his voicemail and texted him back saying, "Got your message. I'll call once I get the package." Savas called Jordan again and also his CFO, asking for $40,000 in cash, telling him to take it out of the bank and get it to Jordan ASAP. Jordan picked up the parcel and the money and set off for the Savopoulos home. Savos had given him very clear instructions to not knock the door, just put the package and the money inside the red sports car. Savas said, "Don't knock, I will be on conference calls. Go to Chantilly, I will be right behind you." This was where his new martial arts studio was, so it wasn't an unusual place to meet him later. Around 8:30 a.m, as neighbours started to leave the house for work and do the school runs, they noticed that Savos and Amy's cars were all still parked on their driveway. Normally by this time, they would have been out and about. At 9:30 a.m, Bernardo got home from his night shift and found that Vera still wasn't there. Concern was now panic, and he drove to the Savopoulos home, 3201 Woodland Drive. Just before 10 a.m, Nellie got a text from Amy confirming what Savas had said in the voicemail. She was absolutely not to come into work that day. Nellie got this message just as she heard the voicemail.
Hey Nellie, it's Sava. I hope you get this message.
And described Savos as sounding flustered and tense. She could also hear what sounded like shouting in the background.
Amy is in bed sick tonight, and she was sick this afternoon, and Vera offered to stay and help her out. And she was sick this afternoon, and Vera offered to stay and help her out.
And as far as Savos saying Vera was staying over, this had never happened before. Neither she nor Vera had ever stayed the night. Nellie said this felt really weird. She had known the family for 2 decades. Something was wrong and she wasn't getting the full story. She tried to call Amy but didn't get through, so sent her a text message. "I hope everything is okay." Again, no reply. When Bernardo got to the house on Woodland Drive, he too was met with silence. He rang the doorbell and banged on the door. He said although he couldn't hear anyone's voice inside, It felt as if someone was there. He could hear what sounded like shuffling and murmuring, and heard the dogs making noise. He then heard what sounded like scraping, almost as if a chair being dragged across the floor. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was Savas. "I'm sorry I didn't call you last night. Vera stayed the night with us," he said, apologising over and over. He said that Amy was ill and now Vera had gone to the hospital with her, so she wasn't there. Savas was only the other side of the door, so why couldn't he just open it and talk to him? It was odd, but either way, at least he had heard from someone now, so maybe everything was fine and he was just overthinking it all. Bernardo hung up and drove home, waiting to see his wife later. Jordan then arrived at the house, dropping the package and the money in the car, before heading back to his own vehicle. At 10:26 a.m, Jordan sent Savas a text message saying, "Package delivered." He sat in his car for a minute watching his phone, as the 3 dots appeared and then disappeared for a while on his text thread with Savas. He never got a reply. 1:30 p.m. Residents started calling 911 reporting a fire on Woodland Drive. The Savopoulos home had gone up in flames and it was spreading fast. The family's dogs were apparently found outside, stressed but not physically harmed. As the firefighters battled the roaring flames and got into the house, they found 4 people. In one bedroom, they found Savas, Amy and Vera. In the room next door, they found 10-year-old Philip. His body was so badly charred he was unrecognisable. They couldn't even determine a gender. He was just listed as adult individual. Savas, Amy and Philip were all dead, but Vera was found unconscious and clinging to life. She was rushed to the hospital battling her horrific injuries, but she didn't make it. Autopsies confirmed that all 4 victims had been beaten with a baseball bat, suffocated and strangled, bound and stabbed. Savas and Amy had died from blunt and sharp force trauma. The medical examiner said that Philip suffered these injuries too, even being stabbed with a samurai sword, but had possibly been burned alive on his bed, which was where he was found. His injuries were too severe to be conclusive, however. All 4 people had been doused in gasoline and the fire had been started in Philip's bedroom. Amy and Vera had duct tape residue on their wrists, and Savas had been restrained, possibly with a zip tie. It was a horrendous set of autopsies which confirmed that everyone in that house had been, put simply, tortured over a very long period of time.
Willie, good morning to you. This community so badly wants answers, but so far there are still very few. Police saying little about a possible motive. They're saying almost nothing about who they believe may have been responsible for these crimes. But who would want to target the Savopoulos family? This morning, we're learning new details about the father of this family, Savas Savopoulos, a powerful business executive. This morning, crime scene investigators are zeroing in on a series of surveillance cameras surrounding the multi-million-dollar Savopoulos family home that authorities believe may have been disabled by the attackers, who police say were likely familiar with the family's routine.
Right now, we have nothing to suggest that this was just a random attack.
At the end of the terrifying overnight ordeal, sources familiar with the case say the Savapouloses and their longtime housekeeper were brutally beaten and stabbed. Their 10-year-old son burned so badly it's unclear whether he was assaulted. Their neighbors in one of Washington, D.C.'s most upscale communities say the family was always friendly.
Their kids came trick-or-treating. The wife particularly was very active in the neighborhood.
Online, an outpouring of support for the Savopoulos' 2 surviving teenage daughters who were believed to be away at boarding school at the time of the attack. Back live right now outside the Savopoulos home, police have set up a $25,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest here. They haven't slowed down the pace of their gathering evidence. We saw a dozen detectives go in and out and around this home again yesterday, as the police chief in Washington, D.C. told us this is going to take some time. Savannah and Willie, back to you.
All right, Peter Alexander, thanks so much. And your heart just breaks for those 2 surviving daughters.
The daughters have lost so much.
A single window on the side of the house had been smashed. The phone lines had been cut. And there was a boot print on one of the doors, which indicated it could have been kicked in, as the boots did not match the firefighters. A knife was found stuck in a gap in the window, almost propping it open, and a computer containing video footage from the home surveillance system had been ripped out of the attic. The keyboard and wires had been left, but the computer itself had been stolen. This would never be located. Neighbours hadn't really seen or heard anything, but a couple of residents reported that at around 12 p.m, about an hour and a half before the fire started, a middle-aged black male with dreadlocks going into the family's garage. He didn't look like he'd forced the door open, it just looked like it opened for him, or someone on the other side had opened it. A blue 2008 Porsche registered to the family was seen on the driveway in the morning, but now it was missing. One camera in northeast DC picked up this Porsche heading east towards Maryland, shortly after the house had gone up in flames, so it seemed that this was the getaway vehicle for whoever had done this. Police would later find the burning car in the back of a church parking lot. Video footage showed someone running away from the car in dark clothing, carrying what looked like a white box, but nothing about the person could be made out. Once they got the flames under control, inside the car investigators found a green construction vest, which was still relatively intact, so that could be sent for DNA testing.
When firefighters got to this house in one of Washington's most upscale neighborhoods, just blocks from the vice president's residence, the smoke and flames were still shooting out of the second floor. Now the fire has turned into a case of suspected arson and a murder mystery. Police seeking to talk to this man, caught on surveillance video, racing away wearing a hoodie and carrying a large white object. Police believe he may have been driving the family's blue Porsche that was found abandoned and torched in a Maryland suburb outside Washington.
We don't know who had the car, but obviously the conditions where it was, in which it was found, set afire shortly after they were discovered. We certainly want to know if anybody saw that car and who was in the car.
Adding to the mystery, another employee of the family told CNN affiliate WJLA she received a text from Amy Savopoulos hours before the fire telling her to stay away.
I don't understand why. God saved my life. Around 9:56 a.m. and they say, I want to make sure you do not come today.
As of Monday, the D.C. medical examiner still had not determined whether the cause and manner of death was blunt force trauma, stab wounds, smoke inhalation, or something else. But police quickly called this homicide and said the victims had been attacked before the fire started. In that last call, the father said on the recording that his wife was not feeling well. Authorities have said there's no sign of forced entry at this house, so the investigation continues.
And back at the Savopoulos home, what little was left behind was being examined and tested too. A fair bit of cash had been left behind, along with some really expensive items like paintings and jewellery. They also found a half-eaten Domino's pizza that had not been touched by the flames. It was then they learned that Amy had made the call at 9 p.m. to order these pizzas, but given what they now know about their injuries, it seemed that the killer had been the one to order via Amy. It also seemed likely that the killer was the one to eat it. They were really hopeful that they would be able to get some DNA off of the leftover crusts, so this was also sent to the lab. "19-year-old Katerina posted individual tributes to her loved ones on Facebook. To her dad, alongside a picture of them together, she wrote, "You will always be my hero and my role model, and I will love you and miss you so much. Thank you for teaching me courage, loyalty, and how to believe in myself. Love you to the moon and back, Bubba." To her mum, she shared another picture of the two of them together and captioned it with something they said to each other all the time, "In a while, crocodile." She then wrote, "Thank you for being the best mom I could have asked for. I love you, mommy, and will miss you every day." And to her little brother, she simply said, "Would do anything to see that smile again. Love and miss you."
This is where they said goodbye to 3 of the 4 victims of this crime. One by one, 3 caskets slowly ascended the steps of the St. Sophia Greek Orthodox Cathedral.
So sad, there's not much to say. It's just heartbreaking, tragic.
Mourners at the funeral said the service focused on the family's love of community and their commitment to charity. 2 of the mourners watching the caskets were the couple's teenage daughters, Katerina and Abigail, who were both away at school during the crime.
It's a terrible tragedy. I feel so sorry for the girls.
The 4th victim of this brutal murder was the family's housekeeper, Vera Figueroa. Her body is being prepared for transfer and burial in her native El Salvador.
Testing on the items was now coming back, and, unbelievably, they did get DNA from saliva found on the pizza crusts. It was linked to somebody that was already very much in their system. It is really incredible to think that somebody made the decision to bag up the pizza rather than just throw it away, assuming nothing of it, because that was what led them to the suspect so rapidly. And a week after the murders on May 20th, an arrest warrant was issued for 34-year-old Darren Dellen Dennis Wint.
Urgent search. A suspect in the case of the family murder, their home set on fire in Washington, D.C. He is considered armed and dangerous.
Tonight, there is a manhunt on.
A frantic interstate manhunt underway for this man, charged with first-degree murder.
The police identified the suspect today as Darren Dillon Wint.
Tonight, the NYPD is passing out this wanted poster and scouring surveillance video to see if Darren Wint was ever here in Brooklyn to visit his girlfriend.
At the moment, police are hopeful that they can make an arrest, but they don't know exactly where Wint is.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I first want to say how grateful I am and the residents of the District of Columbia are to the hardworking men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as our Fire and Emergency Medical Service that responded last week to the home of Amy and Sava Savopoulos. But we're also grateful to our partner agencies at the ATF and the Secret Service who have been working on this case 24/7 since last Thursday. And all of us are focused on finding the perpetrator of this act of evil on Woodland in our Ward 3 community. I also know that you are all aware that MPD has identified a suspect, 34-year-old Darren Dillon Wint. He is currently at large, and we continue to seek the public's assistance in locating Wint.
At this time, we do not have the suspect in custody. Darren Wint is a black male with dark complexion. He's approximately 5'7" in height and weighs about 155 pounds. We have information that he was last seen wearing blue jeans, a blue hooded sweatshirt, and white tennis shoes. Over the past 24 hours, the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force has searched several locations in Prince George's County, Maryland, looking for Mr. Wint. Information gained from interviews and new information in the past few hours, we have information that we believe Mr. Wint is currently in the Brooklyn, New York area. The task force is continuing to search for Mr. Wint. I have been in contact with the commissioner from the NYPD. They have offered and are providing all assistance that we need in trying to locate Mr. Wint.
Darren's DNA was found on the knife in the window, in a bed, and on the green construction vest inside the Porsche. The burning car had been located about a 2-minute walk from the apartment complex where Darren once lived too. As well as all the DNA, they learned that Darren was a former employee at Savos' company about 10 years before, working as a welder. He also occasionally did work around the Savopoulos family home. American Iron Works colleagues said that Savos was friends with all of his employees and made an effort to get to know everyone on a more personal level. Darren had been one of these friends when he worked there. But Darren's employment at Ironworks was not to last when he lost his job over threatening a co-worker with a knife. He then had problems maintaining employment and contacted Ironworks in 2008 and 2009, asking to be given a second chance, which he was not. Darren had come to the United States in 2000 and had been a United States Marine Corps recruit, but he was discharged before he even finished his training for medical reasons. He then gathered a long list of charges and convictions, including assault, malicious destruction of property, burglary and theft, domestic violence, sexual offences, and weapons possession. By the time this particular crime had happened, his green card was already in a precarious position due to receiving stolen property, but certain authorities were not notified about this, so it seemed he had slipped under the radar a little. In 2005, his own father had taken out a protective order against him, and in 2010 he was arrested at a gas station across the street from American Ironworks. He was armed with a pistol and a machete. A day after the warrant was issued at 11 p.m, Darren was finally tracked down in a truck driving with 3 other people. He had been on the run since he saw his name and face on the news, even taking a taxi from Washington, D.C. to New York. His girlfriend had called the police to tell them where he might be, after she realised they were looking for him. $100 bills were scattered around the vehicle. He was finally taken into custody. Darren lived with his dad, stepmother and siblings, and his stepmom said he spent his days looking for work, working out at the gym, and on his phone and computer. He also used his brother's name, Stefan, from time to time. Although he was a frequent Facebook user, there was no activity on his profile between 6 a.m. on May 13th and 6 p.m. on May 14th. People had tried to contact him, including his girlfriend Vanessa, who sent a message to him on May 14th, but he didn't respond. A few hours after the fire had been started, he sent her a message, a picture of 2 iPhones, asking if they could be tracked. While on the run, he also searched online how to beat a lie detector, 10 hideout cities for fugitives, and countries with no extradition treaty.
The man wanted for the murder of 4 people in a Northwest home is behind bars this noon. The search for Darren Wentz took police to New York and back, but last night they got their man.
Larry, what a wild 48 hours. U.S. Marshals traveled more than 400 miles tailing this very dangerous man. He'd led them to this Howard Johnson here in College Park. He checked into that room, 412. Just miles away, he was arrested. ABC 7 News cameras were the first on the scene, and we were rolling when it all unfolded. Take a look. Went already has a long laundry list of past problems with the law, including assault and sex offense.
We tracked him up to New York City, and we barely missed him last night. We have our New York, New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force together with NYPD.
Sources tell ABC 7 News a large amount of cash was found inside the box truck his brother was driving.
Saw 2-3 police officers going down that way. Didn't think much about it because he was supposed to be up in Brooklyn, I thought.
Hours after the arrest, the Savopoulos family released a statement saying in part, quote, "We are thankful to law enforcement who have worked so diligently to bring about an arrest in this case. While it does not abate our pain, we hope that it begins to restore a sense of calm and security to our neighborhood and to our city." The Savopoulos family saying they and the Vera Figueroa family have suffered unimaginable loss back here live. Again, that is the room where Darren Went spent some time here in College Park. Police are still here at the hotel. Darren Went will be in a D.C. courtroom later this afternoon. He is charged with first-degree felony murder while armed. Reporting live in College Park, John Gonzalez, ABC 7 News.
So, what on earth had happened? Well, the full timeline of what went on between May 13th and May 14th is still relatively full of gaps, pieced together only by the odd phone call and text message. It is thought that Darren entered the house sometime around 3:30 p.m, and people are still unsure as to exactly how he did this, whether Amy, knowing him, let him in, or he forced his way in somehow. The knife that had propped open the window was thought to have been done after he gained entry. He had jammed the knife in the window in order to observe Jordan dropping off the money. When Savos returned home thinking he was going to look after his son while Amy went out, he actually walked in to find everyone already held captive and tied up. Darren tortured them over the next 19 hours. Despite the family doing everything he asked of them, not once raising the alarm or calling for help, and getting the $40,000, he still murdered them in the most barbaric way. Darren Went was charged with first-degree murder while armed and held without bond. He was soon facing 20 charges. He pleaded not guilty, saying that his brothers, Daryl and Stefan, had committed the crimes, and he had just been in another room, not realising what was going on. Darren's lawyer also had an unbelievable argument against the DNA. He said that despite the DNA being on the pizza crust, his client doesn't like pizza and never eats pizza, calling DNA a junk science.
Overnight, a defense attorney hired by Darren Wint's family speaking out, telling ABC News he believes the police have blinders on when it comes to the 34-year-old accused of quadruple homicide and arson.
They believe, perhaps honestly, that they have the man, but as a result of that, they're not looking elsewhere.
Robin Ficker, who has represented the former Marine recruit in past unrelated cases, says so far he has only been hired to get Wint's side of the story, telling us Wint's mother is devastated and in disbelief.
She's distraught. She can't believe that he would have done anything like this at all. It's a giant Olympic-sized broad jump from a piece of pizza to 4 homicides. I know him to be a kind, gentle, non-aggressive person, someone you wouldn't mind your grandmother going to lunch with. His mother doesn't like pizza. His sister doesn't like pizza. DNA is a junk science.
But what does that have to do with anything, whether or not it's his top food choice? If the fact of the matter is his DNA puts him right there at the scene, how do you explain why his DNA is in that particular home? He's got the motive. He has the opportunities. A disgruntled employee had problems with that. Why is he there? You still can't identify why or explain why your client would be there. Plus, your client is somebody who has a criminal record, domestic violence, and assault. So all of those things are in keeping with conduct that we're seeing at this particular scene.
Some investigators did indeed say they didn't think Darren could have done all this alone. And one witness had told police that they had seen Amy's Porsche being driven by a man with short, well-groomed hair, wearing a neon lime green construction vest. Darren had dreadlocks. Jordan Wallace also came under fire because he changed several details in his accounts, including exactly where he had left the money in the car.
Detectives investigating the murders of 4 people in a Washington, D.C. mansion are focusing now on a former assistant to one of the victims.
Search warrants reveal police suspicions aimed at the man who delivered the ransom, Jordan Wallace, the personal driver and assistant to businessman Sava Savopoulos. Police say that Wallace lied or changed his account about the $40,000 he took to the home on the morning of the murders, including how he received the package, where he left it, and when he was told to get the package. Investigators got a warrant for Wallace's texts, calls, and locations going back to Sunday, May the 10th, 3 days before the family was held captive, tortured, and later killed. But the prime suspect remains Darren Wint, who's now in custody. Police are also still looking for video from the family's extensive security system. We learned today that the video recorder is missing. Police believe that the assailants in this crime stole the cell phones of the 3 adult victims, and investigators are now tracking the locations of those phones. As for Jordan Wallace, Charlie, he has not returned our calls seeking comment.
He also took a picture of the money and sent it to a friend, a message and picture he would later delete. He had only been working for Savos for a couple of months and said to police he had just panicked when he realised what had happened. He also quickly deleted the text in the picture because he was worried he would get fired if he had been caught doing this, as Savos would have seen it as disrespectful. 2 men and 3 women were also taken into custody in relation to the case.
5 men and women who were taken into custody along with the main suspect, but they were later released.
And no one other than Darren was charged. One of his brothers also provided a strong alibi and would later testify against him too.
The man charged in connection with the case is back with public defenders. We learned just a short time ago the attorney hired by Darren Wint's family is no longer representing him.
Well, there are other big headlines today coming from the Mansion murders trial. It's just getting underway. We knew before opening statements that Darren Wint's lawyers would point the finger at somebody else. Well, tonight, Stephen Cheetah reports it's right at Wint's brothers.
More than 3 years later, in 2018, a 7-week trial would get underway, with a lot of witnesses and experts. Darren's lawyer claimed it was Darren's 2 brothers who had planned and carried out the killings, and that Jordan Wallace was involved too. It had all been one big plot to extort Savos. They said that Darren once lived in the same apartment complex with Jordan's dad, so there was a strong possibility they had run into each other before and formed a relationship. They also pointed out that the green vest in the Porsche had Darren's, Savos's, and an unknown person's DNA, which had not yet come back with a match. Jordan Wallace testified against Darren and admitted that yes, he had taken a picture of the money, but he genuinely had nothing to do with what had happened. He was just shocked that he was carrying so much money, and in his message that was then deleted, he said words to the effect of, "My job is crazy. It was just showing off of sorts." Darren's lawyers said that Jordan had allegedly taken a photo that only showed 2 bundles of cash, whereas there would have been 4 bundles if he was coming with $40,000. Inside Jordan's backpack, they had found a passport, checkbook, and registration for one of Savos's sports cars, valued at $300,000. These were odd items to be carrying around, if you would just be going back and forwards towards work, Darren's lawyers said. But the police had looked into all of this themselves, and they were happy to rule Jordan out as being involved.
It was haunting video taken in the days after the murders and the first time jurors got a look inside the Savopoulos home. While many watched in horror, Darren Wint, the only suspect charged, showed no emotion when the footage showed the charred bedroom and the burned coils from a box spring, the only thing left of a bed where 10-year-old Philip Savopoulos was found. The prosecution started the day by calling Amy Savopoulos' father, James Martin, to the witness stand in what was an emotional start to the day. Martin was followed by several other witnesses, including the director of reservations at a pet boarding company, a business the Savopoulos family used frequently to board their 2 dogs. This woman testified that on May 13th, the day the family and their housekeeper were held hostage, her staff called the home at 3:14 to confirm their upcoming reservation for the dogs, but their landline phone was disconnected. Throughout the day, voice messages were left on Amy's cell phone. She described Amy as sounding sleepy. She was rushing. This time was different. Prosecutors say Amy was being held hostage at the time of the call. Earlier that day, at around 3:25, a neighbor testified that she saw Amy Savopoulos walking in a nice outfit near Calvert and Cleveland in Northwest. She says she was wearing a knee-length skirt, flat shoes, sweater across her shoulder, and a nice leather bag. She had her head down like she was deep in thought. She was clearly walking to get somewhere. But the defense team tried to dilute the neighbor's testimony by showing the jury surveillance video of Amy and her son Philip from 6 hours earlier in the day. She was wearing a different outfit with a different bag. It was one way the defense tried to sow doubt in the jurors' minds.
Prosecutors acknowledged that there may have been other people involved, but said even if Darren Wint had help, he's still guilty. They said everything was motivated purely by greed and revenge. As far as the green construction vest, because clothing like this was used by different people all the time, anyone's DNA could have been on them, but it didn't mean they were involved in the crime. And if it was Jordan or Darren's brother's DNA, surely that could have and would have been easily proven or disproven. Ron Hosko spent 30 years working for the FBI and said, "I see so many pieces coming back to just one person. It's Darren Wint. He's a former employee. He's a person with anger and violence in his past. He's a person that has touches on Mr. Savopoulos and the company since his termination. He's a person that ends up with just under the money that was delivered here. His DNA is in 2 places related to the crime, so the evidence circles Darren Wint. To me, the remaining question is, did he have help? And if so, how much?" He said that it was entirely possible for Jordan's story to be slightly different as he had retold it. Because of the high pressure he was under and the extent of the crime, it isn't unlikely or impossible for people to forget things or get things wrong when faced with something like that, realising how close they came to potentially losing their life as well. Darren testified in his own defence and said yes, he had been at the Savopoulos home for a decorating job, but the job was set up by Daryl. He said he had been duped into being there and left when he learned that Daryl wanted to rob the place, but he did admit staying there to eat a slice of pizza. Darren's stepmom also testified against him and said that he and his van were unseen over a period of 36 hours during the time he was inside the family's home. She said this had instantly struck her as odd, as in the 2 months he had been living with her, he had never been away that long. It wasn't until 6 p.m. the following day that he returned home. He then got into an argument with his dad, telling him he was stressed out. The now 37-year-old Darren was found guilty of all charges against him, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, burglary, extortion, arson, and theft.
Now to that breaking news from D.C. Darren Wint, the man convicted of the notorious Mansion murders, will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
The sentence that she did with the 4 consecutive terms of life without release. So we thank her for that. We thank the jury for their hard work. I can't imagine how hard it was for them. And hopefully this brings a little bit of closure to the families. You don't often see something this senseless. There was no reason for this. He got what he wanted. He got the money. He could have just left. To do what he did to 4 people, including a 10-year-old boy, I think is just beyond words. I can't imagine what those parents were going through. There's no remorse in his mind. He thinks he's a victim in all of this somehow. Evil, I guess.
He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
The D.C. Court of Appeals has refused to grant a new trial for Darren Wint.
He appealed in December 2020, but 2 years later his conviction was upheld, and he was denied a new trial. To this day, no one else apart from Darren has ever been charged in connection with the murders. Darren has not spoke about it since, nor named anybody. For some people, there are definitely still questions that linger when it comes to this case. Some things that just don't quite add up. Could he have actually done all of this by himself? Who did the witness see in the Porsche? Did they even see the right car in the first place? If the motive was money, why would many valuable items just be left in the house to burn? For others, it all makes complete sense. What they knew about Darren, his past relationships, and his experience with Savos and his company, his escalating criminal record, showed no signs of slowing down. A desperate person that was completely broke and someone that had already been arrested multiple times for violent and abusive behaviour. He had already been at the family's home before in the past. He knew what was there, and he knew what he could do to get what he wanted. The DNA has only ever pointed to him, and neighbours saw someone fitting his description going into the garage. What was left of the family's home was torn down in 2017, and in its place, a new mansion was built.
Well, it has been a decade since the discovery of a gruesome quadruple murder in the district.
All these years on, what happened back in May 2015 is still widely remembered, with authorities calling it one of the worst and most shocking crimes in recent DC memory. Savos, Amy, Vera and Philip had been held captive and tortured for almost 19 hours. And the full extent of what happened in that house will not only never be known, but for Abigail and Katerina, Vera's husband Bernardo and their children, Nellie and even Jordan, the delivery driver and Savos' employees, the list of questions and thoughts just loop round and round and round. There are so many what-ifs and maybes, quickly followed by, but who could ever have known? Who would ever have thought that was going on? This cycle of fleeting thoughts, along with the all-consuming grief and pain of losing people in such a horrific way, dominates everyone's minds, and always will.